Hello, everybody. The Classic Fairy Tales by Iona and Peter Opie. We are up to the story called The Fairy, which is also known as Diamonds and Toads, it looks like. And before we start, this is a very short story. Before we start, I have a little bit of background here. The theme of this tale is one of the most popular in the world, that of the proud and privileged being brought low, and the meek and downtrodden being raised above them. A proud widow possesses 2 daughters, the elder of whom is so disagreeable that her mother loves her to distraction, while the younger daughter is so lovely and obliging she is made the servant of the other 2 and has to fetch water twice a day from a well that is 1.5 miles distant. One day at the well, she meets an old woman who asks for and receives a drink. Her reward is that for every word she speaks, a flower or jewel shall come from her mouth. The elder sister follows her, but not her example in courtesy. She is rude to the old woman at the well, and her gift is to be unable to say anything without speaking snakes and toads. For this her sister is blamed, and she is forced to run away. But happily, she meets a prince who is struck by her beauty and proposes to her, though not before he has calculated that the outpouring of jewels from her lips will recompense him for her lack of dowry. This tale appeared in Perrault's manuscript Conte de ma mère Loie, 1695, under the title Les Fées. In Mademoiselle Marie-Jeanne L'Héritier de Villandon's œuvre Miss contentant l'innocente tromperie. My goodness. Oh, I'm not going to say that again. 1695. A much embroidered version of the story appeared as Les Enchantements de l'Éloquence ou Les Effets de la Douceur. Here we go. And possibly the tale was well known in France at this time, although Mademoiselle L'Héritier seems to have heard the story from Perrault. Excuse me. A version of the tale had in fact already appeared in the 4th part of the Pentamerone, 1634. In the story of the 2 cakes, La Doigt Pizel, the 2 girls are cousins, one of them being as fair as she is good, the other as ill-featured as she is ill-natured. The fair one, Mausiella, goes to fetch water at the well, taking a cake with her for sustenance. An old woman begs a bite of the cake, and having tasted Mausiella's kindness, blesses her with 3 gifts, the breath of roses and jessamines, the footprints of violets and lilies, and the more practical ability to comb pearls and garnets from her hair. When the ill-natured cousin, Puccia, attempts to imitate her, similarly equipped with a cake, and is asked for a piece by the beggar woman, she cannot resist the retort that only fools give away their provisions. That one's teeth are nearer than one's relatives. As a result, her accomplishments are to foam at the mouth like a mule, to make thistles grow where she steps, and to produce lice when she combs her hair. The conceit that jewels should materialize when the hair of a virtuous person is combed was not new in the 17th century. In the tale of The Damsel and the Snake, in Straparola's Piacevoli Noti, Night 3, Tale 3, published in 1550, Biancabella, the most wronged queen of Naples, was left in the forest with her hands cut off and her eyes put out, when an old woodwoman took pity on her and brought her back to his home. His wife was indignant at his doing so, and wished to turn her out, but when one of his daughters obligingly combed Biancabella's tresses for her, pearls and rubies and other precious stones fell out, and when her maimed arms were washed in clear water, roses and violets appeared in abundance. The tale of diamonds and toads is said to have parallels in more than 20 countries, and 1,000 variants on the theme of the kind and the unkind girls have been collected. One notable example is the tale the Grimm brothers found in Hesse, in which an ill-clad stepdaughter is sent out in midwinter to gather a basket of fresh strawberries. She comes to a small house where live 3 dwarfs. When she has shared her crust of bread with them and swept the snow from their back door, they give her these gifts, that every day she shall grow more beautiful, that a king shall marry her, and that her voice shall literally be golden. Each time she speaks, when she returns home, pieces of gold fall from her mouth. Her stepsister, however, who also visits the dwarves, is as perverse as was Putia. In consequence, her fate is to grow uglier every day, to have a toad spring out of her mouth with each word she utters, and to die in misery. A not dissimilar story, which has long been known in England, is the story of the 3 heads in the well. And it may be remarked that the torment of toads issuing from unwelcome places, as a consequence of ungraciousness, was a phenomenon familiar in Britain long before the arrival of Perrault's tale. A broadside ballad entitled "A Most Notable Example of an Ungracious Son, who in the pride of his heart denied his own father, and how God for his offense turned his meat into loathsome toads," was published in the time of Elizabeth I, and subsequently reprinted a number of times. Indeed, God has sometimes taken the role of rewarder and retributor even in fairy tales. In a Russian variant of Diamonds and Toads, God the Father plays the role of the fairy, accompanied by 3 angels, and the denouement takes place in a church, while in the Grimm story of The White Bride and the Black, the Lord, in the guise of a poor man, rewards a good stepdaughter with 3 wishes, but a malevolent mother and daughter he makes as black as night and as ugly as sin. The text that follows is the first English translation of Perrault's Le Fay, which appeared in Histoires or Tales of Past Times, or Histories, 1729, under the title The Fairy. This is the tale now usually known as Diamonds and Toads. That's the end of the introduction. The Fairy. There was once upon a time a widow who had 2 daughters. The eldest was so much like her in face and humour that whoever looked upon the daughter saw the mother. They were both so disagreeable and so proud that nobody could live with them. The youngest, who was the very picture of the father for civility and sweetness of temper, was withal one of the most beautiful girls that ever was seen. This mother loved even to destruction her eldest daughter, and at the same time had a frightful aversion for the youngest. She made her eat in the kitchen and work continually. Footnote. In the manuscript version of 1695, the sisters are stepsisters, the beautiful younger girl being the daughter of her father's first wife, as in Cinderella. This was doubtless the relationship in the traditional story, but Perrault probably altered it to make the situation less like that in the Cinderella story. End footnote. Amongst other things, this poor child was forced twice a day to draw water above 1.5 miles off of the house and bring a pitcher full of it home. One day, as she was at this fountain, there came up to her a poor woman who begged of her to let her drink. "Oh, ay, with all my heart, goody," said this pretty little girl, and rinsing immediately the pitcher, she took up some water from the clearest place of the fountain, and gave it to her, holding up the pitcher all the while that she might drink the easier. The good woman, having drank what she had a mind to, said to her, "You are so pretty, my dear, and so good and so mannerly, that I cannot help giving of you a gift." For this was a fairy, you must understand, who had taken upon her the form of a poor countrywoman, to see how far the civility and good manners of this pretty girl would go. "I will give you for gift." Footnote. These words the fairies make use of when they have a mind to do good or harm to anybody. End footnote. I will give you for gift continued the fairy, that at every word you speak, there shall come out of your mouth either a flower or a jewel. When this pretty girl came home, her mother scolded at her for returning so late from the fountain. I beg your pardon, mamma, said the poor thing, for staying so long. And immediately upon speaking these words, there came out of her mouth 2 roses, 2 pearls, and 2 large diamonds. What is it I see there? Said her mother, all astonished. I think I see pearls and diamonds come out of her mouth. How comes this, child? This was the first time she'd ever called her child. The poor creature told her plainly all that had happened, not without dropping out of her mouth an infinite number of diamonds. Truly, said the mother, I must send thither my daughter. Come hither, Fanny. See what comes out of your sister's mouth when she speaks. Would not you be glad to have the same gift given to you? You have nothing else to do but go and draw water out of the fountain, and when a certain poor woman comes to ask to drink a little, to give it her very civilly. It would be a pretty sight indeed, said this brute, to see me go to draw water. I will have you go. There are no quotations around any of these, so whenever it changes a person, I never know. I will have you go, said the mother. So she went, but grumbled all the way, taking along with her the best silver tankard they had in the house. She was no sooner at the fountain than she saw coming out of the wood a lady most richly dressed, who came up to her and asked to drink. Now you must know that this was the very fairy that appeared to her sister, but had now taken upon her the air and dress of a princess, to see how far the rudeness and ill manners of this girl would go. Am I come hither, said the proud brute, for nothing else but to give you to drink? I have just now brought a silver tankard on purpose for my lady. You may drink out of it, I think, if you will. You have not a grain of civility or good breeding in you, replied the fairy, without putting herself into a passion. Well then, since you have so little manners and are so disobliging, I give you for gift that at every word you speak there shall come out of your mouth a snake or a toad. As soon as her mother saw her coming, she cried out, Well, daughter? Well, mother, answered the brute, and at the same time there came out of her mouth 2 snakes and 2 toads. Oh, mercy, cried the mother, what is it I see? It is her sister that has been the cause of all of this, but she shall pay for it, and immediately she ran after her to beat her. The poor creature fled away from her and went to hide herself in the forest that was hard by. The king's son, who was returning from hunting, met her, and seeing her so very pretty, asked her what she did there alone, and why she cried. Alack o day, sir, my mamma has turned me out of doors. The king's son, who saw 5 or 6 pearls and as many diamonds come out of her mouth, desired her to tell him whence this happened. She accordingly told him the whole story, upon which the king's son fell in love with her, and considering with himself that such a gift as this was worth more than any marriage portion whatsoever in another, conducted her to the palace of the king, his father, and there married her. As for her sister, she made herself so odious that her own mother turned her out of doors, and the unhappy wretch, having wandered about a good while without finding anybody to take her in, went to a corner of a wood and died. The end. Well, it was a nice little story. Next one is Bluebeard.